Hello, everyone. Welcome to our conversation with Mr. Alan Solomiak. He is an expert in standardization. The only intellectual property documentation we are aware of are the patents. And here he has introduced a new standard at the request of European Association of Inventors. He has designed the CreaFREE standard. Let's try to understand from him how a simple voluntary standard circumvent an existing legislation.
Yes, I'm indeed a specialist in standards, and I have discovered at the end of my career as a professor of law that standards regulate the global world. Before this global world, before 1994, the World Trade Organization, the World Trade Agreements, there were treaties and national legislation. And it was difficult to have exchanges between states. There were many barriers to trade because the states had their own national legislation and they were different from one another. And with the global world, with the new treaty, with what was done in Europe a little before, we have now at the highest level, we have international treaties and we have standards which implement the essential requirements of these treaties. So the global world is mainly made with standards, and these standards work together with legislation. And usually the national legislation try to cope with the standard to be in this free exchange of goods and services. So this standard is not supposed to go against patent or to go against old intellectual property. It will go aside old intellectual property, and it will implement essential requirements of international treaties. In particular, and we will repeat this article sometimes in the future, Article 15 1C of the Covenant of International Economic Rights.
You had mentioned about a market research that you had conducted over 1,500 people, and you mentioned that around 50% of people were willing to create their Creabook and register their inventions. So could you tell us that what is it about the Creabooks and how many have you registered so far that is making it so popular at the beginning of its introduction?
Yes, we had the studies. It was made by an independent agency next to about 300 people. They were French people, or representing the whole population, not specialist engineer, workers, or whatever. Everybody in the population, starting from 18 and over. 18 years old and over. And I was very surprised by the results because the people were not informed about Creabooks, about intellectual property and so on. And there was a series of questions. I think there were 10 questions. And at the end, there was this question, would they use such a Creabook? And very strangely, it appeared that 50% of the population that was interviewed would use such a Creabook and would probably register one Creabook per year. This is gigantic. If we project these figures at the world population, it would mean something like 3 or 4 billion Creabook per year. This is extraordinary. And it just reflects one thing, is people know that we have change of society. We are no more in an industrial society, and we have registered something like 20 Creabooks. This is, of course, very little, but we hope that we are now launching the Creabook on the market using the CreaMaker, and we hope that in a few months from now, we will have a few hundred Creabooks, and then we will raise the necessary funds, and we will take the nice road to unicorn, and things will change faster and faster, like it did recently with artificial intelligence. In a few weeks, artificial intelligence covered the world. Yes, this is exactly what the team have created, which is called World Creator Society, wants to do. We don't want to make money. Like most creators, we don't want to make money. We need money to create, but our objective, we are not accountant. We want to create. We want to give a sense to our life. And I believe that in this new creational society, everybody has the right to give a sense to his life, to build something. And we would like to help everybody to join us in this creator society.
So the standard that you have introduced, Mr. Allen, is a book where you publish your innovation and then it protects the rights of its original author. And we have seen that the patents or the old regulations of intellectual property have effectively excluded this. If you have published something, so you cannot take a patent on that particular thing, or it's not your particular invention, anybody can use it. So could you please help us explain how is Creabook being effectively used here?
This is the principle of patents you've just described, and this is correct. Patent protects something which is novel, which is new. So if something has been published somewhere else, your patent application will be rejected. And if you don't have a patent, you will not be protected. The idea of the patent was that if you have creation of arts or literature, it's not useful, so you can have author rights. But if you are doing something useful for society, if it's really useful, you cannot protect it because it should be shared by everybody. So you cannot have the money to develop it, you cannot have return on investment, except if you have a patent on this novel invention. Creabook is totally different, admits that any publication is subject to author rights. And if you have published some invention, some creation somewhere, it does not prevent you from being the author. And it does not prevent you from investing, having return on investment, and being able to put on the market this invention. This is the big difference between patents and Creabooks. We will discuss that moreover a bit later. Just wanted to point out that writing a book about your innovation, if you're a startup, about your creation, if you're an artist, is something usual. It has been done for long ago. When we know that some people are inventors, it's because they wrote books. We know all the invention of Leonardo da Vinci because we have his Codex Atlanticus, where all the sketches are and drawings have been made. We know it's Leonardo. We know that Huygens invented the watch, the clock we used before we had the quartz clock, because he wrote a paper to the Academy describing his invention. We know that Newton is the inventor of universal gravity, so there were controversies, there were other inventors at that time, but he wrote a big book on this matter, and he claims to be the creator, and he has been recognized as such. So it's from the beginning of civilization, from the beginning of writing, books are the way to record creation, novelty, and so on, and that's the way civilization progress. There is nothing wrong about writing a Creabook. It's just going on with a tradition. And the idea that this would be forbidden has no sense. And the idea that you would be expropriated, you've done something, you've done a work, and you write a book, and now it's no more yours. How come? It does not make sense.
Yes, and the gap that you're trying to fill here in the regulations and standardization of intellectual property is a very intricate gap. So here I also want you to speak about your own experience with your first startup, where you had to go for such a long legislative intervention, and still you had to face a very big loss just because you could not find a system that would protect your invention. So could you please take us through that journey?
Yes, we were a small startup, and for small startups, we wish to cooperate with big organizations, big companies, because they have labs, because they have all the tools, because they have the distribution system, and so on. So startups look for cooperation with big companies, and in many cases, startups invent some new telephone, Android, for example, and then Google buys it and give it its full dimension, and there's nothing wrong in this matter. We had invented some new, very important product, switch up optical switch, that would change the whole system of switching in houses, in office, in factories, and so on. And we had first market with the national defense in France to develop the product, and we were supposed to make Tempest keyboard. We associated with a big company when we signed a confidentiality agreement, and they took the whole market from us, and they patented with other patents than ours, and we had a fight with them, and they had the best lawyers in France, and the fight lasted 12 years, and we went on bankruptcy. And we have designed this standard to prevent this happening ever again, especially for all startups, not only for us. And that's the reason of this standard.
So what you're trying to tell us is that if at that time you had published a Creabook and it was that Mr. Allen is the author of this invention, then you would have been able to claim your rights on the particular switch that you had developed.
Yes, we have created plenty of new tools inside this standard, not only the Creabook, but also some tools for justice, procedure, and so on. And to prevent this type of action to occur again, we have created two special tools, CreaSafe and Creapax. CreaSafe is a new type of confidentiality agreement, very short, like traditional confidentiality agreement, 2 pages. But on the first page, we give the Creabook, we call the Creabook. So there is a full description of the product. We wouldn't have had the difficulty in justice as we had in practice. And on the second page, we have a list of crypted annex where we put in the confidential information we wish. And in this crypted annex, we would have put the national defense market, and then it would have been easily proven that we had been stolen from this big company. And at the end of the CreaSafe agreement, we also have amicable settlement procedure. So we wouldn't have to go to justice if we had a difficulty with this big company. If we had the standard at that time, we would just have asked for a mediation and then an arbitration, and in 1 year the file would have been closed. With the Creapax, we have the possibility to generate also this type of amicable settlement and obtain compensation. So this would have never occurred in this situation.
So you told us, Mr. Allen, that CreaFREE standard would come alongside the patent. Can the Creabook really compete with the official patent in establishing the proof and the property of the inventive fact? Because patents have been long-standing, and our Creabook is something that we are introducing as a new concept alongside it. So how do you think it can be more qualitative?
So what is important is to know the fact. Who was first, who made the work, who discovered, who created the innovation. Justice, privilege, fact in any case. So the Creabook is written to prove who the author of the creation of the innovation is. This is the object of the Creabook. The patent does not do this at all. It's very strange. The patent does not prove that the guy who applied for the patent is the author of the patent. It's nowhere written in the patent, and the guy brings no proof at all. The patent is given to the first guy who opens the door, who put the paper in the patent office. It's the first applicant who received the patent. It makes no sense, so on, that's not what counts for the judge, for justice. What will always count is the fact. There was a rule in former law that said that the father of children was the husband of the wife. So it was a nice law and it would be applied for a long time. But now we have DNA. We can have the proof that it is and if the father prove that he is not the father of the child, he's not the father of the child, and law can say anything, justice cannot contradict the fact.
So the patent application is reviewed by the trained patent officers and a lot of the times associated with the government, and this system is long withstanding. and has earned a lot of trust of venture capitalists. So why would a venture capitalist place more trust in a private Creabook that may not be an officially issued by government?
Yes, that's also a very good question. So, of course, for a venture capitalist to have an official title gives a credibility, no doubt about it. But venture capitalists know that the patent, that the certificate or the examination given by the office is not guaranteed. The state does not guarantee the patent it delivers. So that's make a big difference with the Creabook, because the Creabook is guaranteed by the World Creators Society. This is a very big difference. And the examination made by the Creators Society is much deeper, much further than the patent examination. First, the Creabook is made by the creator, it is registered, and we have no control on this registration. We don't reject inventions like patent office do. But if the guy wants to prove and have confirmation and certification, then he can enter the process. So the first start of the process is that the Creabook is published, and anybody in the world may contradict what is in the Creabook. And the inventor, the startup, may review its Creabook and make it better through this contradiction and make something stronger in this way. So the first exam is this public inquest. Then there is another exam which is made by accredited expert by World Creators Society to see if the Creabook is formally correct. Does it has all the elements, structure, and so on, which is mentioned in the standard, and did the creator, the startup, answer the question in the public investigation? If it's correct, first certificate is delivered. Then there is a second certificate, which the patent has none in any way. It's the value of the creation. There is a methodology in the Creabook to value each innovation. So the startup value its creation, and there is an examination made by the World Creators Society expert to see if the methodology of evaluation is correct in line with the standard. And this is the second certification. And we have a third certification, which is a bit like a Nobel Prize. We have a jury composed of the best specialists in the world in this matter, and they read the Creabook, they receive the authors, they ask them questions and so on, and if they feel that the creation is really original, then they deliver the stamp of originality, which is the highest level which we can achieve in the world today. So we call this a sovereign Creabook, and we are much above the level of examination of the patents.
So the first point that you highlighted was very important, that patents can often be very geographic and limited to the nation. But here, when you register a Creabook, you are getting a global registration. So your invention is with your name, whether it is, it is in India, whether it is in Europe, it is under your name, and you always remain the original creator, which is definitely a point that clearly stands out about Creabook. The standard seems to place significant emphasis on the moral rights of the creator to name its innovation. And you mentioned that you defended your own doctoral thesis when you were publishing your studies. So is there a connection between the studies and the importance that you place on creators to have the right to name their creation?
Yes, indeed, there is a connection. So my thesis in law was dedicated to the power of nomination. Power of nomination. Nomination refers in this matter to the designation of ministers and civil servant, but it also refers to the idea of naming. And the naming of the product by the creator is a moral right which is recognized by international treaties. In the Declaration of 1948 of Human Rights that was prepared by Eleanor Roosevelt, it is written in the Article 27, it is written, everyone has the right to the protection of moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production of which he is the author. So this declaration, which is followed by various other treaties, implementation treaties, the creator has a moral right. And this moral right, one major element is to name the product, the innovation, the service he has created. And this name he has given cannot be changed anymore afterwards. French philosopher used to say, nomination is a metaphysical act of absolute value. So if in the scientific world, if somebody cheats and says the inventor of something, we gave him his name to the invention. If we discover he has cheated, we immediately erase his name and replace it by the right name. And this occurs many times. People change the name of the product to say, oh, it's not him, the inventor, to say it's us, to say we don't depend on him. So the creator must absolutely play his role, play his moral right, and nominate his product. And this is very easy to do in a Creabook. Use the name of the product, name of any innovation as the title of the Creabook.
So I must say you have a very deep and a very vast study on the subject where you are able to point on such intricate details. And this brings me to the follow-up question that if the right to name is inalienable and it can be used to claim the lost innovation, won't this be a very disruptive thing for the market and create a lot of significance?
It will, and it would. But so in many cases, innovation have been stolen in our world quite a lot. I will not give too many names, but this is very usual. There is an affair concerning AIDS between Professor Montagnier and Professor Gallo, and there was stealing made through renaming. There are other matters concerning car navigators. We call this GPS navigators, but they are not really GPS navigators. They were invented by a guy who named them Clever Navigator. I forgot the exact name, something like that. So they were renamed. This happened many times. And with this standard, it will be possible for the creators or for consumer to ask that the right name would be used. And this will change a lot of things. It will in some way probably generate some disturbances, disorders, yes, but as we will see in the next part, in the next development we will discuss, the creator has in his moral right also a right to require an ethical exploitation of the creation. And with the naming, he will also associate a better exploitation of the creation for the quality of life of the people. So disorder to this price is compensated by a much better order.
In your book, you argue that the ecological disaster the world is facing is a consequence of the direction taken by the traditional intellectual property system. Instead of mitigating disaster, progress seems to be accelerating it. How can the Creabook help change this trend?
Our system of intellectual property is non-ethical. It has no ethic. It is directed to serve companies, and companies want to make profit. And they do not behave according to what economy should be. Economy is a science invented by a Greek called Xenophon, who was a disciple of Socrates. And according to Xenophon, economy means good norms or good standard to regulate the administration of a domain. And in this book, Xenophon insists on the fact that economy should always protect nature and even improve it. This is not what we have done with patent. We are destroying nature and more and more. More there is progress, more there are digging of mines, more there are pollution. We have the patents serve established companies, and the established company are I regret it, polluting company. So there's a whole old intellectual property system serves bad causes and destroy the nature.
Yes.
The Creabook is supposed to change it, and we've designed the Creabook in such a way that it would change it. Creabook is not ethical at the beginning, so anybody can apply for guns or any bombs or whatever, but we only certify Creabook which contain an ethical charter of exploitation in which creator serves the interest of society. And all the invention we certify must have a continuous ecological improvement clause. So all the progress made under certified Creabook must serve the improvement of nature. So this is a very big difference between patent and Creabooks, because Creabooks, if they are not certified, have a little value, and to be certified, this Creabook should have an ethical chart.
Yeah, so certified Creabooks are serving the ethical chatter, which is a gap that patents are not able to fill in, at least as of now. So here is another question that I have when you said this, Mr. Allen. The economy is renewing itself at an unprecedented space. Over 70% of the products on the market today didn't even exist 30 years ago. You believe that thanks to the Creabook, most of the products on the market in the 10 years will be genuine, authentic products protected by the author rights. Can you tell us what is the impact this authorization will have on the ethics of our economy?
Yes, we are all very sad. We see the nature being destroyed. We see wars multiplying. The future looks very bad. We spend a lot of money we don't have, and the new generation will have to suffer for all this. We can have a much brighter future, a future where robots do our work. We don't have to work anymore, and this is happening. We can have a future where a lot of creations are made, and the creators are interlinked by many licenses, and there are a lot of interdependencies between the nations. So that's was the success of Europe. No war at all, because too much ties, too much bonds between the nations. So that's another very positive consequences that I can see. And then people looking for the quality of life, not consumption society, not armament, much brighter future thanks to ethical economy. This is what economy should be, bring happiness to people.
Yeah. So aren't you concerned that with such an extensive IP rights, both in the scope and duration, and with the millions of rules that you just told me, we could see a generalized blockage in the market, because like everything is now, under the author rights of so many people?
Yes, this was an argument. I had some exchange with many people when I prepared this standard, and I had some exchange with a very good patent agent, and that was his argument. If everybody could protect his creation, then everybody would block the economy, would ask things impossible to the economy, and this would ruin our society. I don't believe in the truth of this saying. First, we have the World Creator Society and all the Creabook, which will organize the exchange between the creators, and these creators will have to have a responsible behavior and share their creation with others. That's one thing. And second, in practice, this authorized system has existed with the Berne Treaty since more than 1 century, and we have never seen a blockage in art, in movie, in literature. On the contrary, they developed very well in this system. So why not the rest of the economy? And finally, the last argument is, if you have on one side wars and of the balance, one side wars, destruction of the planet, and on the other side, economy of ecology and an economy of peace, everybody should prefer peace and ecology to war and destruction.
This is an important thought leadership that you have, Mr. Allen, which a lot of us may miss when we are looking at the new IP system that you just introduced. As you said, on the one hand, it is being available to handful of people because patents being so costly, and then there are so many reasons that you shared with us throughout the conversation that we are having. And on the other side, we are opening that avenue to the globe, to as many creators as we can. And now, because they have rights also come with the responsibility to deliver something that's good for the economy. So I clearly understand the balance that you are trying to create when you answered a question. Thank you very much for answering such an important question. Investing in startups in its early stage is incredibly risky for venture capitalists. We have discussed how the new IP framework could help mitigate some of the risks, but the possibility of losing everything is still over there. Your book on startup success claims the ROI multiplies when you start seeing with this perspective. So, in our current ecological context, every tool to encourage investment in startups should be explored. Can you explain what do you mean by the return on investment multiplies over here?
Yes, this is a great question, which gives a sense to all what we have said now. If the startups manage to raise the necessary money to double the research of investment, which is now around 2.2 to world level, if we put it at 4 or 5, then we will have a massive investment in changing the world, and will be able to change the world very soon. For the last 20 years or even more, since Kyoto Agreement, many startups have been created. They had great ideas, but they could not realize them because they didn't get the money. I studied the startups who succeeded. The best didn't do very good things, like TikTok and other. That's one of the biggest unicorn in the world. It is the biggest. It's nothing. It has no ethical chart. It works without ethics. But our startups would work without ethics, with ethic. But I've studied these unicorn, and I discovered things I did not imagine. That is, biggest unicorn we have, or the GAFAs and so on, the return of investment is incredibly high. It's between the seed phase and the expansion phase. They all multiply their return on investment, the value of their shares, by more than a multiplier of 1,000. 1,000. I thought that venture capitalist was a multiplier of 10, but it's much higher than this. So there are possibility of profits for investors in startups which are very, very high. And we went further in this matter, and we draw a curve of multiplier, of the multiplier of ROI. And we discovered that when investment is made in the early phase, where it's the most needed by the startup, then the multiplier is very, very high. And if people invest in the latest phase, that is scaling or expansion, then the multiplier starts to be very low. So it's interesting to take risk and invest in the early phase of the startups. And if we do this, we won't have a failure of 90% of the startups, but maybe a failure of 80% only, or even lower a failure. And if all these startups succeed with ethical chart, we will change the world in a very fast time, in a very short delay.
So the Creabook is being a very intelligent solution and a bridge both for the founders of the startup and also for the venture capitalist, because startup also want the funding in the initial stages and it's risky for the venture capitalist, but they also get better returns if they have invested in the right kind of the startups. So you recommend that startups, either independently or under the guidance of financial institutions, form collective investment schemes which will reduce the ROI multiplier but also significantly lower the risk of overall failures. Can you elaborate more on this approach to just conclude our conversation?
Yes. The startups need money. People should spare more money, and general people in all population should stop this consumption trend, which is very bad for the living. We should stop this advertising and so on. We should start building the future and not consume the planet all the time. And this is possible if we create investment tools for the startup. Such tools would be very simple. The Creabook is transformed through the blockchain into non-fungible token, so that starts to be a material property, which is autonomous, and the creator can now share this property with other people, and it can get loans from it. It can create some money, that's called utility tokens. It can also create some shares. So that's a first way to finance the startups. But big companies such as insurance companies or banks can also create portfolios of various startups, maybe a portfolio of 20 startups in well-chosen sectors, domain, and so on. And in this portfolio, they make one share. And of course, some startups will fail in these 20 certified startups. A small number will fail. And the other who succeed will compensate the failure, and the general profit will be very high. So we believe that with such high profit offer, and 10%, 15% a year, 20% a year, everybody would like to invest in something, and not 2 or 3%, but 20%. So the capacity of the startup to raise money would grow immensely, and the possibility to change the world also could realize in a very short delay.
Yes, so the Creabook is definitely a win-win solution that you have brought to fill in the gap that is existing in the old IP system. And I would like to just give a short summary of whatever I have understood and how intellectual property through Creabook is going to be a significant disruption in the coming days. The Creabook provides a robust tool for securing the intellectual property of startups. It claims can be validated by certifications, which deters confronting the naming process based on the moral rights of the creators, allows a quick and clear identification of the ownership. The CreaFREE ecosystem offers all member startups the resources to build a public support around an ethical image. So it's not only limited to venture capitalist funding. The ROI multiplier curve that you explained enables the creation of financial instruments that can mobilize the substantial savings needed to fund the research and development and everything that a startup needs to grow in the initial phases. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. It was really a very good exchange. Thank you very much. Thank you for this very good interview.